Hello, my name is Yakov Fein, and I am a co-author of this book, Angular 2 Development with TypeScript. You can get this book at Manning. It's a me app program, but all chapters are written, so you can get it there. Every chapter in this book ends with a sample of the online auction sample applications that we are building while writing the book. All source code examples are published over here on GitHub. You can find all of these examples, and we are updating them pretty frequently. We started receiving messages from readers saying that great book, thank you very much, but we are having problems with understanding the initial code of the sample auction. So we decided to help our readers and do a quick review of the code. For example, chapter 2 of this book. Chapter 2 has this section hands-on, getting started with online auction, right? So the auction should look like this, and we describe everything in there. So I'll do it again for you, and I'll do a code review. The only thing is that I will do a code review of the version from chapter 4, not chapter 2, but I'll be using chapter 4 because it has a little bit more stuff. It has routing and it has dependency injections. I want to explain this a little bit as well. But as to the application itself, this is a screen that you're supposed to see. Imagine that you have an online auction where you can see featured products. Up here you can see some slider with changing images. You should be able to do search of the product. And what else? You have a bunch of featured products over here. You can click on the title of the product to go to the product details screen and so on. Instead of using images, we are using a site, placehold.it or placeholded, which is a pretty nice site that allows you to get the images like squares of the specified size. But these are the squares, gray squares with gray gradient. So we use it instead of using actual images. So basically that's the goal, to build this application that works. At the end of every chapter, we usually describe it pretty nicely, how to start the products, code review, how to develop a homepage, for example, or something else, but I'll do it in the code. Meanwhile, I want you to understand that this application, as any application written in Angular 2, is a tree of components. Angular 2 is component-based, so we would be developing different components, right? So with green borders, you can see that there are different components. Up on top, there is a navigation bar. This is a search component. This is a carousel component. Down there are several products component and a footer. The other thing that I want to tell you before we go to the code is that for this version of the application, we are using Twitter's Bootstrap library. It's a pretty popular responsive library of responsive components, so we decided to use it as well. As a side benefit, you can see that you can bring to your TypeScript application, you can bring other frameworks or libraries written in JavaScript. So let's go to the code then. When you will when you will clone that repository from GitHub or download it, you can open up the directory in your IDE. I'm using WebStorm IDE, which is nice. And the other choice that you have, actually have several choices, but the other IDE that we like is Visual Studio Code. That one is free completely, and it works pretty nicely as well with Angular applications. So when you will open up a directory for the auction application from any folder, and as a matter of fact, let me show you, we have different chapters over here. This is the repository for code samples. And in every chapter, if you'll open it up, you'll see different examples, but you also will see a folder auction, right? And currently they are, I believe most of them are updated to Angular 2 release candidate 4. So I'll be using this chapter 4 example, this example auction from here. So if you will clone this repository and will go to your IDE and open this folder, auction, you're going to see the code like this. The structure of the project look like this. The auction folder, right? And it has app folder with components and services in there. It also has a bunch of configuration files. This is something that you would need to learn extra comparing to any JavaScript framework. When you write in TypeScript, you have more configuration, and it's not so bad. It's not so bad. So let's see what we got here. The main page of the application is index.html. What else? Of course, index.html. Let me make it a bit bigger. So what do we have in there, in this index.html? First of all, we have dependencies that should be loaded. As I told you before, we are using Twitter's Bootstrap library for responsive components, right? All these CSS in there. But the thing is that Twitter Bootstrap is based on jQuery. So that's why I added these two lines, line number 8 and line number 9. Plus, I've added the CSS from jQuery with all these nice components in there. So this is what we use here. This is what is not Angular. What is actually also not Angular. These four are dependency of Angular. So Angular framework needs these libraries. Zone.js to monitor and detect changes. Typescript Compiler, by the way, in this, at least for the most part of the book, we are using System.js that loads TypeScript modules and compile them on the fly in the browser. In chapter 10, we explain how to do it differently, how to create production builds and precompile stuff, but in most of the examples, we are using TypeScript, which compiled things in the browser. Also, you will need the Reflect.js. Angular requires it. And what else we need? We need System.js itself, the module loader that we use in this case. System.js knows how to load modules, right? But to configure the modules and what has to be loaded is we are adding this file with configurations for System.js. In general, you will need two APIs, two functions to call from System.js, import and config. Import function is here. We are saying that we want to import something that is known as app. What is that app? Let's see. We'll figure it out. If we cannot load it, we'll catch an error and we'll print it on the console. So that's a big deal, right? Now, what else I see in this index.html? I see some weird HTML tag, auction application. As you can guess, this is not something that comes with standard HTML. This is a tag that will represent sort of an entry point to our Angular application. And I'll show you where it is defined. So pretty simple. But now let's see how this code knows how System.js, which is a shame for future system objects that every browser will include. But for now, how System.js knows what is app. And of course, it goes to its configuration. It tries to find configuration. In my case, I am using System.js config.js. It's right there. So this is configuration file where we configure things for System.js. As you can see, it starts with system.config, right? So what we are saying here, we are saying, dear System.js, please use transpiler TypeScript. The thing is that you may be using different languages, right? So System.js, for example, can use different transpiler if you would be writing code using the ECMAScript 6 syntax, which we are not. We are using TypeScript. That's why we are saying that. What else? The other option for the transpiler is we are saying emit decorator metadata true. This is needed for all these annotations, or as I call them, decorators. When you will be writing TypeScript classes and you will be writing components in Angular 2, you will prepend them with decorators. I have Java background, so for me it's more natural to say annotations. So these annotations look in Java, and here looks very similar. So what else we are saying here? Actually, I didn't finish, sorry. So when we say emit decorator metadata true, we are saying when you will be compiling a code, maintain the information that is specified in all these decorators. So save the metadata. And now this thing, app, we are mapping this word app that I used in index.html right there. We are mapping it to the directory. In this case, it has the same name, but in your case, it could be anything. But we are saying in the configuration file, whenever somebody asks system.js to import app, look for stuff in the folder app. Great. Next, we also say that if you will see in my code anywhere rxjs, maybe I want to import something from rxjs, it is located in the folder of my project node modules, rxjs, in there. Is there folder node modules? Let's see. Oh, there is no such a folder. How come? We'll explain in a minute. Next, when you will see, we say to system.js, when you will see something that starts with @Angular, for example, import something from Angular/core. Where is that core? Whenever you see something that starts with this, go to node modules/Angular, and in there, hopefully, you'll have what you need. The other thing is the section packages. We are saying what is the main file of this or that package. If you go backwards from bottom up, you will see that all these @Angular things, Angular lines, specified to particular, refer to particular packages from Angular 2. And everywhere we're saying that your main entry point is in the file index.js. It's not I who invented this, it's Angular team decided so. But my baby, my invention, creation, is the main class, main with extension TS. I didn't specify extension here, but I said by default use extension TS for TypeScript. And I said, so how do we read it? So the package app that was mapped here has the main entry point in a file called main. So I can guess that somewhere under app there is a file called main.ts, and I am right. It's right there. So this is basically the initial code that should load my application. In the book, by the way, we have a whole bunch of different examples. And sometimes we write, go to configuration file and specify a different one. So it knows which example you want to load, right? In this case, we are loading main. But just remember, this file is a place which will allow you to switch easily from one code sample to the other. All right, great. But again, what is missing? Node modules, right? We don't know where it is yet. Now, the other thing is, let me open up any of the code from the application. Ooh, something is in red. Why something is in red? Because I'm saying what? I'm saying import component, right? Let me make it a bit larger. Import component and something called view encapsulation from where? From @Angular core. So what did we say in the configuration? That Angular core should be in this folder, right? Whenever we say something @Angular, it should be in the folder node modules. Again, we run into the same issue. There is no node modules yet. Why there is no node modules yet? Because I didn't run npm install. That's supposed to install all dependencies that I need and create a folder node modules in my project and download them there. How npm knows what to install? Actually, I opened the terminal window. You can open it up separately if you want. in your Windows system, Windows operational system, like command prompt, right? Or you can open it on Mac. I'm using Mac, the terminal window, but WebStorm IDE gives you a nice feature. You can open up the terminal window right there. You can click on this button, for example, and type all these commands that otherwise you'd be typing in the separate command window. Cool, so I can type in npm install here, npm install or npm I. If I will type this command, npm will, first of all, let me see, which folder am I in now? pwd. I'm in the folder Angular 2 code chapter 4 auction, right? We are there, this folder. So when I enter npm I or npm install, npm manager, which has to be installed on your computer, right? How do you get it? Just installed Node.js. When you download and install Node.js on your computer, you will get npm for free, so to speak. You'll have it. Until you did it, npm will be unrecognizable command. Let's see. When I type npm I in this folder, npm will try to see. They want me to install something. What do they want from me? Did they provide the file called package.json? It's a standard for npm packages, right? And if they find it in this folder, they will use settings from there. The npm actually will go there and see what they want to install. And luckily I have this package.json over here, right? And this is where we define everything that we need to install. In this particular case, what do I say? I have a section script. I'll talk about it in a minute. In this particular case, I say that I want to use npm with a version greater than 2.14 because there were some changes, important changes. But what is most important for you is this section, dependencies. This is where you specify what your project depends on. As a matter of fact, there are two sections. One of them is called dependencies, and the other one is called dev dependencies. Dev dependency is where you specify what you need to be installed on the developer's machine. Dependencies is a section where you specify what has to be installed on the production machine. So, for example, I'm using Typescript 2.0, right, on my dev machine. Most likely, your application will be pre-compiled into JavaScript by the time you will deploy it. So why do you need TypeScript in there? Another thing is, I am using a very light server, web server, to test my application. Nice package called Live Server. I needed to quickly run something on my machine. Of course, in the real-world application, you would be using production-grade web server. So that's why we keep Live Server in the dev dependency section and not in there. Not in the dependencies. What else I have here? I'm using something called ES6 shim. I'll talk about it in 10-15 minutes, but for now, just remember, this is a place where we will be storing type definition files for the package called ES6 shim. But let's go back to dependency section. Over here, we download every package that we want from Angular, and I highlighted all of them. The Angular itself, the framework, the common package, compiler, core, form, and so on. The router, by the way, we are using the latest at the time of this writing, which is what it is, July 26th of 2016 or 25 maybe, right? So it's we are using whatever we have today. Now, these two guys, Bootstrap and jQuery, I am using only because I decided to use Bootstrap from Twitter, which is based on jQuery. So I added them here. Then what else? Reflect metadata, RxJS, System.js. These are all packages that are needed for my Angular application. So when I will run npm install, again, I don't go into details of npm. Otherwise, I would need to spend a lot more time here. It's written and described in the book. So I will just run npm I. So npm reads my package.json and install all that on my machine, as you can see. When it's done, you will see over here the new folder node modules, right? And this WebStorm ID, unfortunately, it'll spend some time for indexing files on your machine. It downloads tons of files, like 10,000 files right now on my machine. So WebStorm ID needs to figure out where they are, and pretty soon down there you will see this indexing message. So far, if I will come here, the redness is still there. It still couldn't find them, but down there you see this indexing bar. It tries to find and index new files that are downloaded where? In this new folder, new modules. When indexes is done, the redness should be gone. It's still doing this. But we can see that all these modules that were specified, I'm sorry, it's my doggy, that were specified in the folder, in the file package.json are here, are downloaded already, right? In particular, as you can see, there is a folder @Angular. @Angular is where we have all these Angular related modules right there, right there. @Types is a type definition files that I installed additionally for ECMAScript 6. Why would I need them? I need them because in a couple of places I'm using ECMAScript 6 API, while I want to compile the code into ECMAScript 5 syntax. So that's why I had to install this ECMAScript 6 shim. So indexes is still running, but it looks like the redness is gone already. It already knows that where to find the component, where to find view installation, router directive, and so on. Why? Because all these folders like Angular Core, Angular Router are already installed in the node modules directory. So if we are done with that, what else we want to see here? Typescript Config. Typescript Config is the place where you specify where you tell the compiler, Typescript compiler, what to use and what not to use. What to use and what not to use. We are saying these are your compiler options, something that otherwise you'd specify in the command line. But if you have tsconfig JSON, you don't need to specify anything in the command line. And we are saying exclude node modules. We are saying to the compiler, if you will ever need to compile, don't even bother going to node modules. There are tons of TypeScript files, don't compile them, they are not mine. They are hopefully bug-free and so on. This is it, so from the configuration perspective, it's not too bad. Now, let's see if we can run this application after installing all that. So how do we run it? As I said, I already pre-installed on my machine something called live server, a light web server. So technically I can enter over here live server, and it'll start. But to make it more consistent throughout the book, what we did in package.json, we defined a command in the section called scripts. There is something called npm scripts. You can read about it. You can specify commands to run. You can define your own commands to run. So in this case, I defined the command start, which supposed to start live server. So instead of just typing live server, I will enter over here npm start. Again, npm will go and see what is how the start command is defined. It'll go and see that, oh, yeah, I have to start live server, so it'll do this. So when I will do that, what will happen? It'll start this application, start live server, sorry. Live server will start loading index.html. Index.html will load all these dependencies, and it'll reach the point where we want to load my application, right? So at this point, this configuration file will kick in, so it'll know how to load my code that initiates from main.ts and all Angular modules as well. So if I will hit enter over there, it's supposed to load my application, open up the browser, and pretty soon I'll see the page of my application, which I do, right? So that's my application. It works. And the slider works, right? And this slider is, again, it's a component from Bootstrap created by Twitter. Now, the products are shown. The products are hard-coded for now, but it works, and I can click on the product title, and it shows me the product details screen with reviews and so on. So the application works. Now I'll spend 15, probably 20 minutes to reviewing the code, so you can get started faster. Let's see. Now let's go and look at the application code. We have a project called auction, right? Underneath I have one folder, actually, app. Under the app folder I have two subfolders, components and services. Services is the place which gives us data about products, right? So we are going to see and look for products which are hard-coded over here. This is an array of products which are hard-coded here. Now the code that loads it's up there. So we have the method in the class getProduct. We have the method getProductById. At this point you see one function, find, in red, as if I'm using the wrong API. This is supposed to be fixed, not supposed to be fixed. This is fixed by using ES6 shim that I installed. But for now, this IDE is a little bit shaky. Sometimes it may show you an API in red, but it actually is not in red. It is installed, it's downloaded. In my case, it's installed in the @types subfolder. So all definitions for all this API is there. Again, pretty soon it'll be fixed, of course, by developers of this IDE. So what do we have? We have a method getProduct, right? Which supposed to return the content of the array products, right? Content of the array products, it's right there. And we use something called map. We are building, basically, for every product we are creating a new instance of the product object with these particular properties. There is somewhere there is the code to return reviews for products. Get reviews for products. We specify product ID, and we return a reviews array, which is another array somewhere down there. Yeah, there's a reviews array. So the service is a class that is the data source technically for our application. As you can see from the injectable annotation, apparently we're going to be injecting this service into our component or components, and our components will be using the API from product service. That's it for services. Components have a whole bunch of different subfolders. Each of them is about one component. Up on top there is navbar component, small one. Down at the bottom there is a footer component. Let's go back here. Up on top, this is a navbar component, this black one. The footer component is at the bottom. It has not much, but it should be showing something down there. See, copyright online auction 2016, right? The template is here. That tells you exactly this. Next, the application itself. Actually, I probably should have started with main.ts. If you remember, in the in the configuration file systemconfig.js, I said, whenever index.html will ask for app, go and actually load main.ts. So what is in this main.ts? Let's see. In this main.ts, imports of the Angular stuff, and the import of my components, home component, product detail component, and product service. Again, I don't go into details of all these classes. They are described in the book, but just for now, 30,000 feet overview. So what do we do in this main.ts? We bootstrap our application. What are we doing there? We are saying, find for me the application component. It was imported somewhere, right there. From where? From the file called application, and default extension is ts. So it's found right there in the application.ts. Right? So let me collapse the import. What else we are saying to the bootstrap? The second argument of the bootstrap method is an array of providers. I assume that you already know what is dependency injection. The dependency injection requires you to specify a provider for every object to be injected. Again, without going into details, I'm just saying that this is one provider, this is another provider, and this is the third provider here. The first provider is specifying routes, configured routes. The router, the new routers, otherwise known as router 3.0, which is in beta 2 now, it has a certain configuration to be provided. In particular, it's an object of type router config, which is nothing else but an array of objects that conform to the route interface. In particular, this route interface has path property and component property. Path property is when it's empty, display home component. When you have a URL segment that looks like this, product/product ID, then display product detail components. Location strategy says that we use hash location strategy, which means that you will see a little hash sign in your URLs. It's right there. See, I'm trying to explain, to drill down into details, which is not right. It's not the goal of this video. So. And product service, our service that we will be using for providing the data. So after this main TS is loaded, it'll bootstrap the application component. Let's look at it. The application component in turn has other dependency on other components, its children, so to speak. So let's skip router directory for a second. It needs a navbar component, footer component, search component, and home component. Whatever it needs, whatever components it needs, you have to specify in the directive property in the component annotation. Router directives we use to be able to use all this goodness provided by the router. For example, router link is defined in there, activated route, route config, and so on. So these are dependency of the application itself. Next, the fact that we said that the selector for this auction application is this is how I named it, means that it gives us the right to use this name in index.html. So that's why we can specify this custom tag auction application, and Angular knows how to find it. So whatever we put in this in line 21 has to be specified somewhere. In our case, it is specified as a selector of the application component. The HTML itself, the template for the component, is specified separately in this case in a file. So there are two properties. One of them is template, and the other one is template URL. So depending on which, if you want to have inline template, you would be using template property. If you want to refer to another file, you'd be using template URL. So we are using template URL, and we are saying where is the template. The template is right there. Template is pretty small over here. So what do we see there? You will need to read a little bit about Bootstrap Flex Grid. And this is what we use here. To provide a layout on the UI, let's see, if you look at the UI, you can see that the screen splits somehow. So there is this area on the left given to the search component. The rest is given to this carousel component and a whole bunch of feature products. So how this split is done? Again, this is not a tutorial on Bootstrap from Twitter, but I will just give you a quick hint, so to speak. In Twitter Bootstrap, the screen is divided into imaginary 12 vertical bars, so to speak. Regardless of how wide or narrow your screen is, it'll still be divided into 12 imaginary areas. And depending on how much of the screen real estate, screen width, you want to give to your component, you use something like this. These classes are from Twitter Bootstrap. For example, this class says what it tells me. No, first of all, it's row. We are saying I want to give a row on the UI, and for this div, you want to allocate call MD3. What does it mean? It means that for mid-sized devices, you want to allocate 3 columns, 3 imaginary columns, right? Based on the actual size, this will be calculated. And for this div, we want to allocate 9 imaginary columns. So what do we say here? We say that for the top div, we are allocating 3 out of 12. So basically 25% of the width of the screen to the auction search component. And this is our auction search component, 25% of the screen. By the way, take a look. If I will start changing the size, sorry, I have some, I don't know what. We'll close it, but check it out. The screen behave responsive design. Again, it's a different topic, but it reallocate, and all this is given for you for free by the library called Bootstrap from Twitter. Right, so 3 out of 12 columns were given to the search component, and 9 out of 12 were given to the rest. What is the rest? The rest is the router outlet. This area where we will display one component or the other. No, when I say we, I actually mean Angular's router component. Router component uses router outlet to display what we want to display there. And down there we have footer component. Up on top we have navbar component, and down there we have footer component. This is all there is to it in the application HTML. So the question is what we are going to see here in the router outlet whenever we start the project. Let's look at the configuration again, router configuration. If we don't specify anything else after the base URL, we are saying display by default home component. And that's why when we start the application over here, you see the content of the home component. If I will click on this link, look at the status bar down there at the bottom over here. Look at this. If I will click on this one, the URL will change to products/0, or on this one product/1. The router will find the match in the configuration where the URL segment has the word products, and after slash it has product ID. Coming back to the UI, to the configuration. Line number 13. As you can see here, if there is a URL segment that looks something like this, product slash and a value, we are saying that show the product detail component. How to pass the value 1 or 0 or 2, it's a different story, but this is how the whole matching works by the router. And that's why when I click on this first product, for example, the URL changes, right? And whatever you see after the hash is for client-side navigation. It doesn't make any request to the server, it doesn't refer the page, but the router is smart enough to find the component, pass 0 to this component, and inside of that component we will get the details for the product with ID 0. Where do we get the detail for this product? From the service. Remember, we have a service that knows about the data, and in there is something called get product by ID. We will pass the ID to the service, and it'll bring us back the right screen. What else I want to show you today? What else? This is the application, the big picture, right? Let's look at the home component. This is something that is shown by default whenever you start the application, based on our router configuration. So what do we see here? That selector of this component is auction homepage, and if I see something in the directive section, it tells me that home component uses these other two components, carousel and product item component. Carousel is the big one on top, the slider, and product item component is one of these, do I still have it? One of these little green boxes. Each of them is represented by one product item component. The CSS, by the way, this is the first time we see it here in the component annotation. The styles URL is sitting separately in this case in the home CSS file, which is right there. Not a large file, but it has something in there. The next question is how many products we are going to see. How many of these green boxes? Or if we come here, how many of these? 1, 2, 3, you see, 4, 5, 6. In this case, we got 6. How all this is rendered? How all this is rendered to the UI? As you can see over here, we have an ng4 loop. Let the variable product defined on the fly of products of array product, which is here, and we are saying in a loop for every item from the product array, please render the auction, something known as auction product item. This is binding. For every product located in this array, every product will be passed as an input parameter for the auction product item. Right? Now, how this array gets populated? As you can see, in the constructor of the home component, we inject the product service, and we use it immediately to invoking its API get products. Get products jump right into this variable products, which is an array. Then Angular will use a loop to loop through this template, and for every element from here, the data about this product will be given to the auction product item. Let's look at something here. Product item. What is a product item? This is the one. Product item is just a class with the product. This is something that will be displayed in one of these green boxes. Product item. Right? Product item has its own template, of course. Right? And product items, as you can see over here, it has something called router link. It is right on the title. The title is actually a link. But for this link in Angular, we use not href as you would be using in regular HTML, but we are using router link, and we are passing to the router. We are saying find a match for this URL fragment product, and give product.id to this component. Not only open something that is mapped to the path product, but also give it an ID. All right, and also what else we have? We have a product for ratings. In this auction, we have a component called stars over there, and it can display rating. Different stars that are either filled with color, with red in our case, or are empty. So this is how we render stars. Details about the stars components are explained in the book, but it's not a rocket science either. Star components is pretty small. In a loop, we check something. We check the value that is coming from the product service, the stars, and we paint the right number of stars. Again, without going into too much detail, that's good enough. So product item is one thing. That displays one product. Product detail will be engaged only if I click on the product title. If I click on the product title, the router will go to that link. Router link will find for me this product item component. Sorry, on product item components, and will displays details about the product. Let's go back to the product item component for a second. This is the product item components, and what else it needs? It needs stars components. Correct. It needs stars components. Product item HTML is this product title that I just clicked on, right? And it's supposed to find the match for this URL segment. Router configuration is done here. And when it finds the match for products, it understands, oh, I need to render product detail component, right? And this is the guy that is located right here, product detail component. Product detail component has what? A product and an array of reviews, because you may have more than one reviews, right? What's interesting in here, to pass parameters to the child component using the router, it goes through the activated route object that is injected to your component by Angular. So whatever ID was given to this component, 0 or 1 or 2, will be available there. There is actually more than one way of getting it, but the simplest one is route, this variable, snapshot. Snapshot is the current status of the route, and there is a variable params, and we know that we are passing product ID. So whatever value is the product ID for the product that is sitting under the click will be passed over here. So say we have product ID 1, we will invoke this service get product by ID passing 1, and also we will get the reviews for the product. So what are you going to do with them? We will populate the variable product and the variable reviews. Now we need to render them somehow. How do we render it? We are rendering using the template which is specified in this case in product detail HTML. Let's open it up real quick. Product detail HTML, it's right there. And so in here what we say is, we say first of all show us product title, then product description. I'm talking about the product detail page. Let's go back to the UI. So what do we see here? First we see the product title, then we see product description, right? Product description. Actually we see product price also, right? And we use the class pool, right? It's from Bootstrap, Twitter's Bootstrap. We also show product title, and we show product description. So these are three guys: price, title, and description. Then we see something that looks like rating, right? Another div. This div is for displaying ratings. So we show the number of reviews, which is the length of the array of reviews, right? And to get to render the rating, we use auction star components, passing this rating, the value, as an input parameter, to this component, and it know how to paint the appropriate number of stars. And after that, what do we have? We have another div. We have another div, which is this one. Over here, we display a whole bunch of reviews. Let's go back to the page. As you can see, we have 6 reviews over here. So each of the reviews is shown one after the other. Again, we have a for loop. Let reviews of the array review. We loop through them, and we render values from the review. User, who left it comment, when it commented, and so on. This is a pipe, by the way. We are using the date pipe to display short date. See, the short date is over here. Anyway, so I think that you should have a pretty good starting point for this project. Again, I was reviewing the auction from chapter 4. In chapter 2, it has a little bit less functionality, and we are refactoring this application as we explain new materials. But I hope this video will help you out with this project. Finally, before I leave, I want to tell you a couple of things about typings. When we are developing code in TypeScript, we are using type definition files, and in particular we are using type definition files for the code that was written not in TypeScript but in JavaScript. Imagine that whoever developed a particular JavaScript library, say jQuery, they developed it in JavaScript. They have no intentions of rewriting it in TypeScript, right? But nice people around the world from JavaScript community, from TypeScript community, they created the definitions of APIs that define not only the name of the function and arguments, but the types of the arguments as well, and the return values, type of the return values as well. So all these type definitions files, initially they were located in special repository called definitely typed. Then people started to put them in different places. And then they started to create type definition managers. The first one was TSD, that is deprecated now. The second one was typings, that is also technically is less than 1 year old, but it's already old. In the JavaScript world, it's already old. We don't need it now if we are using TypeScript version 2.0. I am using it on my machine, and TypeScript 2.0 has an additional option called Add Types. So you can specify that you need to install type definition files, and use them during compilation. So Typescript Compiler knows if you are using a function so-and-so, like Ajax function from jQuery. It's supposed to get these arguments, and the arguments types should be so-and-so. Where can we install these types from? In npmjs.org, they created an organization called @types. So you can install these type definition files the same way as you would install any other npm package, and all type definitions from definitelytype.org were migrated into npm under the organization @types. So basically, if you want to install any type definition files, you would be doing the same npm install, but you would be installing it from @types / and then whatever you want to install. If I wanted to install, for example, for some reason, types for jQuery, I would do it like this. If I wanted to save this configuration in my package.json, I would be adding save -dev development configuration save, and it would save this configuration in my package.json. And then if I would run it, actually let me show it to you as if I need it. Node modules, as of now, it has no jQuery, no types for jQuery. I have this @types folder, but in there I have only ES6 shim. But if I will run this command now, actually I don't want it. I will not even use this save dev I don't want to change my package JSON, but let's say I want to run this npm at types jQuery. So it'll find the type definition for jQuery, and if I will open this folder now, you will see that it installed DTS files for jQuery as well. I don't need it, so I will remove it, of course. Alright guys, so this is basically it. So I hope it'll help. This video will help you to get started with hands-on projects. And if you want to learn Angular 2 under the guidance of instructor, myself and my colleague Anton, we wrote this book and we run training classes, so feel free to join one of our public or private if you want training classes on Angular 2. Thank you very much for watching. This was Yakov Fein.